5, verses 13 through 16, and I'm reading from the New English Common Version. Jesus says this, "You are the salt of the earth, but what good is salt if it's lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father." These are the words of the Lord. Thanks be to God. My dear friends, some who are snuck in here by a little invitation, and the bulk of you who are still sheltering in place for one more week, we ask that if you are not feeling well next week, as bad as people have been texting me all week saying they want to come, we ask you to take care of yourself, for that's God's will for your life. Those of you who are raring and ready to go and are moving, we hope that you join us in the sanctuary next week and help us continue to commune safely. We've got social distancing signs on the floor. We've put we're not going to give away all the other surprises we've got for you. You'll just have to look around the church as you come in. We have stations and masks, and we should have a wonderful celebration if you help us remain social distant. This week has been one of continued unpredictability, hasn't it? One day, it's 89 degrees. The next day, it was 69 at the farm. Go figure that. COVID numbers overall are declining, except some hot spots in the country are rising at a rapid rate. It is clear that this virus keeps on trucking. Almost every city in our country had folks out on their streets walking and voicing the injustice that has plagued people of color for decades. Unpredictably, the videos that dominated the news feeds at the beginning of the week changed from videos of anger, disgust, polarized solidarity of police versus protesters into pictures of both sides kneeling together at the same time, handshaking across police lines and protester lines, fist bumping, and yes, most unpredictably, even reaching out with an arm and bowed heads in prayer together. That, friends, is the work of God in our very midst. Even on US 23 at the end of Newman Street on Friday, protesters stood with signs of Black Lives Matter, be the change, love your neighbor. Yes, it was an unpredictable week. Now, we should not look at these happenings with kumbaya glasses, for it will take hard work, understanding, and yes, action for the rest of our lives to achieve equality and justice that God ordained for all people. But I don't know about you, I sure sense a glimmer of what yet might be. I'm humbled and eager to learn God's love, peace, justice, and what that looks like for you and I in 2020 and beyond. This week, I turned again to the Matthew Gospel and looked for guidance. Now, the end of chapter 4 tells us about the beginning of Jesus' ministry, the call of the first disciples, and the large crowds that began to gather to listen to his teaching. And with that in mind, we look at chapter 5, from which our reading comes this day. And chapter 5 begins with the important Sermon on the Mount, opening with those Beatitudes. Remember those? The Beatitudes, which we'll look at more intently in the weeks to come. But for today, we jump ahead to verses 13 through 16. So let's look at this thing about you are the salt of the earth and you are the light of the world. In case you missed it when I read it, he wasn't talking to the disciples, he was talking to you and I. First, what is salt? Science tells us that it is primarily sodium chloride. Two elements necessary for human life, combined with a few other trace minerals. And you know what? You and I mostly know its properties. Salt adds taste and spice to things. It also preserves things. Particularly, this was known to the ancient populations who didn't have plug-in refrigerators or even dry ice, right? They used salt to preserve their meat as they went through. But did you ever get salt in your eye? See, it's so nice to have back. Monica's going, yes indeed, PK. You get salt in your eye, and what happens to you? Right? And what do? You run for water. Salt can also irritate, friends. Now, it also, besides spicing things up, can heal. If you can look over here, a friend of mine and a friend of yours, Jan Camrath, who is still trying to repair from flood damages right here in Tawas, gave me this salt lamp when I first came here. And she said, Kathleen, I have one at home, and if I turn it on in my bedroom in the dark, it seems to be calming. And what this is salt. Gang, it's called a salt lamp, but I invite you afterwards, if you're able, sorry about that at home, just pretend. The salt, you can feel that it is, and it's pink salt. Some say that's Himalayan salt. Anybody ever buy Himalayan salt now that's in the grocery store, the pink salt? I do. I like the color. It's supposed to be better for you, but I like that pink. It does have healing properties. And also, it causes us to thirst. I'll talk about that again in a minute. It's coming up right here. Here's the first thing we're going to talk about salt. Hilda Barnes. Hilda Barnes was our neighbor and a very, very good friend. And Hilda Barnes made it to 99 and 6 months old before she passed to glory a couple years ago. And Hilda Barnes taught me that salt can heal. She swore by using salt packs to rub on inflammation on your skin, and even chest colds. A few drops of water in a cloth packed with salt was the best medicine for all what ailed you. The principle is that salt will draw out infection. I got to tell you, it did work on my mosquito bites. Now, what about this? How many people have been told by their parents or by a health practitioner, gargle with warm salt water and it will help heal your sore throat? Hands up, I've got folks. 100% of the people here, gang, I'm thinking you better be doing this at home, right? Yeah, isn't that your first go-to? And even health practitioners say, gargle with warm salt water. There must be something happening there. That's survived since before the Roman culture, which thought about salt so differently than we do. It became a very valuable commodity in the Roman Empire. And so, of course, they capitalized on that, and they used it in their trade. Salt was very valuable. Salt can heal. Do you ever crave salt? How many bags of potato chips that you go through at the supermarket, and I don't know about you, but I look at the ones now, modern concept, lightly salted. I'm moving right down the line. Give me the most salt in those Lay's potato chips you can possibly get. Why? What happens to you? Because, that thing, you bet you can't eat just one. No, because, and I take the bag with me when I go into the living room. I love salt, right? Salt, we crave it. The light salt is for people who have been told you need to eliminate salt in your diet, right? Those of us that consume a half a bag of potato chips in the evening do that because guess what? The Lay's company also makes Coke or Pepsi products. I can't remember which one, right? So it's good to make you thirsty in the market because you're going to run to the refrigerator and chug down a Coca-Cola or whatever. Interesting. Well, here's the deal though, and I've been blessed, so I should not be talking to you about this one, but too much salt, however, can be dangerous, right? Anybody with diabetes? Yeah, I'm looking back at my Chuck back there. He just raised his hand. Yeah, and what do they tell you? The first thing that you're supposed to eliminate from your diet with diabetes, hypertension, or any of the other things is get rid of the salt. Yeah. Or use a salt substitute. Yeah. Elsie tried that for about 30 minutes one day. And then I look over, she's got the, what is it, Mrs. Dash's seasoning, right? Yeah. Yeah, we got some nods in the sanctuary here. And so she does a little Mrs. Dash. She takes a bite. She looks like this at the table. I moved the salt shaker way away, right? Could you pass that salt shaker? No. She gets up, she goes, gets it. Yeah, okay? Salt is a very important thing. And it also can kill vegetation. I did a version of Where's Waldo this morning. I hope you guys at home can see this. Can you give me, Murph, can you give me a close-up at least of this for the benefit of my congregation in their seats at home? Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, there, whoops, there, whatever. All right, here it is. Yeah, technically, all right. Perfect. I love it. All right. So here is the story. So on the farm this spring, well, I got to back up 1 year quickly. Okay, a year ago, I read that salt can kill weeds. kill. Okay, so I do my Googling. Of course, don't we all Google these days, right? Okay, I do my Googling and I find out, yes, this is true. It will kill lots of things. Okay, so I bring home, I go to the favorite store down the road in East Tawas, and I can get 40 pounds of salt for $5. Now, they're big. I forgot where I put it. Just don't go away. Oh, yeah. Okay, just a minute. This is show and tell this morning. Asparagus, grus, or whatever. This is, I'm going to make a mess. I'll clean it up. They're like the rock salt that you throw on your driveway, right? Okay, so I bring home 40 pounds of that in a bag, and I sprinkle it around the edge of the gardens because I don't want to trim. We have tons of gardens and tons of mowing space. So instead of having to trim, I take my bag, just like the sower and the seeds, and I go, and I edge till the bag runs out. And then I pray for rain. And eventually it rains. And by golly, I go out there 2 days later, and there's a nice little brown line all the way. I'm like, by George? And because Elsie is organic, as much as we can, we grow stuff that's organic. Roundup is in the cards. It shouldn't be for anybody. But anyway, so no Roundup. So I'm glorious. I'm like, Elsie, look, it did its job. It killed the weeds. And she said, and you also killed my poppy that's over there. I'm like, She knows every flower in those gardens. I'm like, one? Yeah, she was upset. So I had to do more research. Okay, and I found out that yes, indeed, pure salt like this is, you use it in your pools and you use it in water softener. That's where you get it, for water softener. Don't ask me about that. That's beyond my scientific brain. But anyway, so I find out that salt will indeed kill everything that you put it on. So I retreat. Man, I can't kill all the plants here. Those plants are 100 years old. This year I say, Elsie, please, can you work with me here? It'll be so much easier for us if you let me put salt. You tell me where to put it. So I did this. Now, this all started because she said, you can put it in the asparagus plot. And so I dumped about 5 bags. It's a big plot. I dumped about 5 bags of salt down there, right? Boom, everything turns brown, except asparagus. How about that? Victory, yes! All right. I was indeed amazed. She came in last night. You have to pick it every day because now it's going. So apparently asparagus and salt have a very close relationship. And she came in last night with this, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And I said, I want to put that in the refrigerator, and I want to use it in my sermon. She's like, so here we are. So what's the point? Yes, salt can help grow the right things, and it will kill everything else. So make sure you know what works and what doesn't work and how you want to use this salt. So here's Jesus telling us that we are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And if we lose that property to do all of these things, we won't be good for much of anything. Wow. If I reflect on the salt properties, I'm positive that I can continue to irritate. And I think I do a fairly good job of spicing things up around here. But how can I heal or preserve or create thirst? Let's stop and think about that for a minute. If we are salt, then we need to create thirst for Jesus. If we need to be the catalyst for healing the wounds of the world. We need to be the compress that causes people to seek relationship with the God who can heal their wounds. We need to be the element that creates a thirst for understanding God, the God of love, Jesus Christ who embodied that love, and the Spirit who lives in every one of us. The ones we are told that were coming to Jesus at this time, the ones who presumably were hearing this Sermon on the Mount, were described as those sick, those in pain, those who were broken, and those who needed God. They weren't the healthy, uplifted, cheerful people, and you know what? They didn't have it all together. They were like us, waking up to live one day at a time, waiting on the inevitable, unpredictable future, and thinking they are not salty enough to do anything about changing it. And it is to these people, the imperfect, maybe the lost, the lonely, that Jesus gives that blessing. And then he tells them they are salt and light. Friends, you do not need to have it all together to be salt and light. You just must be as we are, blessed and broken. You know, there are cracks in a lot of things in this world, and I think that's how light can get in. It is exactly at our points of weakness or pain that force us, like those who originally followed Jesus, to stand in need of God, to stand in need of true light. So perhaps those cracks made from bad choices or from anxiety or from depression or from struggle or even remorse, maybe those cracks are what let God's light in. And maybe some of those cracks are also how light gets out. We should not forget the fact that Jesus does not say, here are the conditions you should meet to be the salt of the earth. Here are the standards for wholeness that you should fulfill to be the light of the world. He looks out into a crowd of people who are broken with the salt of sweat and the tears on the bodies and says, you already are salt. You already are light. You have the light of God within you, the God whose light scatters the darkness. Your imperfect, beautiful bodies are made of chemicals with holiness shining in them. You are made of dust and the very breath of God. Don't wait until you feel you have met the conditions of being holy. Trust that Jesus knows what he's doing, that you are already salt and light and love and grace. Don't try to be it. Know that you guys already are. And then, for the love of God, take that seriously. As usual, God shows me what I'm supposed to be talking about when I least expect it. The writing was done. I had read it over, and I breathed a sigh of peace. I was ready for today. And about 1:30 in the afternoon, I see an 18-wheeler semi roll up on Tower Line Road in front of the farm. Now, we had purchased a new lawnmower. Thank you. My staff has been hearing my trials for the last few years about the lawnmower breaking every time you get ready to go and something falls off. Okay, so yes, indeed, Elsie and I went to purchase a new lawnmower, and Elsie's comment was, I don't think we have ever had a new lawnmower ever on this farm. And so up pulls this 18-wheeler. I thought it would be in a little Home Depot truck, one of those ones, and then they have a little lift thing that's in there and it comes out. Whoa! I'm like, are you kidding? What is that? And I'm like, okay, I better run out there because they stopped in front of the driveway. Out I go, and I stop, and I see a little green John Deere on the back of this truck. There was nothing else. And I thought, that's a little overkill. And so I went out to the edge of the property by the mailbox, and I stood, and I looked in the cab, and there were two gentlemen. And the one gentleman that was the passenger seat, he kind of did this. This is a visual end of the sermon. And then looked straight ahead. So I thought, well, maybe I'm short, and I was standing under the lilac bush. I figured he didn't see me. And the guy turns, and he goes, what? Okay. I mean, he can't smell me. I was out, in the garden, but okay. And so then the other gentleman gets out of the truck, and he walks around, and they are two black gentlemen. And I said, hi, wow, I'm impressed. That is one big truck. No response. Walks around the whole back of the 18-wheeler, and he said, where would you like this, ma'am? And I said, well, I was going to have you put it down the driveway up on the cement slab, but you can't get that in there, and so maybe you could just put it off on the side and drop it next to me, and then I'll drive it back. And he says, there's no gas or no oil in that thing, ma'am. You can't move it anywhere. And I went, oh, dear. And he said, I can get it back there. I'm like, well, okay then. He said, you just show me where I need to put it and direct me, and I'll do that. So I take off, and I go back to the driveway, which is quite a ways down around, and he gets back in the truck, and he's there for a brief time, and then he gets up. I'm kind of like, okay, I'm smiling. And he gets to the back of the 18-wheeler, and he's got one of those fork dudes, right? And and so he pushes the button, down comes the forklift, drives around. Now he has stopped the traffic, 2 cars. But for us, that's a traffic jam. And so he has stopped the traffic on Tower Line because he's got, and he takes it and he lowers it. And I'm like, how cool is that? So he's driving and I'm now running to the back. And he says, where? And I point it and he unloads it and he gets off the truck. And I said, you really know what you're doing. And he says, well, thank you, ma'am. And I said, wow, is this what you do, for a living? And he says, well, it's kind of like a second job that I do. And I said, well, you're really good at it. I mean, he hit the mark just perfectly. So then he says to me, he said, now, you might want to cut those ties off, and this here is and he starts explaining where the manual was and things like that, and so we strike up a conversation. And as it took time, I said, boy, your buddy's probably getting a little antsy there. And he says, now that's all right, I just brought him to ride along with me. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, to be honest with you, you never know what happens when we come up here, I would have been afraid to come by myself. So when I have jobs to deliver up here, I try to bring somebody with me. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, "I'm Pastor Kathleen," and I put my hand out. And the guy stood there, and he put his hand out. He said, "I'm Jamal." And I said, "God bless you," you know? And he said, thank you for that." And so we stood, and the poor buddy, I'm sure, is going nuts in the truck because we're talking, and he said, "I have a 2-year-old son, and I hope that he grows up till I'm going to teach him." He said, "Wait till he gets 8 or 9, and he just starts talking, and we have this conversation." And he said, "There's a neighbor of mine that kind of fixes lawnmowers and things." And I had said to him, "The reason I'm getting this is because our old one is broken down." And so he said, "Maybe, I'm from Saginaw. Have you ever been to Saginaw?" And I said, "Yeah, pretty much weekly." And he said, I'm trying to get out of Saginaw." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "I want to live longer. I've got a 2-year-old son." You get it, of course I got it, And there it was at home. It hit home right there. And he said to me, "But I have a neighbor that repairs lawnmowers. If you're ever down that way, you know where Court Street is?" And now we launch off into another conversation about his neighbor. He's retired, but he loves to fix things. And he said, "I hope to get one too." And I said, "Jamal, I have one that I would be happy to let you look at. Would you like that?" And he said, "Really?" And I said, "Yes, really, look at here." And he kind of chuckled, and he said, "Well, thank you, that's all right." I said, "Do you want to see," you know me, I go, "Do you want to see it?" And he says, "Well, yeah." And so he walks to the tractor shed with me, he and I, and he looks, and I said, "Now, here's how you start." I give him all the directions of how to run this one because it's so old, it's nothing like the one he dropped off. And I said, "Here, do you want to try to start it up?" And he's like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, I'm serious. Get on." I forgot that the seat was moved all the way up. So, and this young man is 6 foot, and he, bless his heart, he sits down on the machine, and Elsie said that he looked like a grasshopper. And I didn't get it till I got the image of his knees way up here, and he's sitting on it. It's pretty funny. And so I said, "Start it up," and he drove it around in a little circle, and he got off, and he said, "Can I don't have any way to get it back." And he said, "I guess I could put it on my rig." I said, "Absolutely, you could put it on your rig. You got to go back there anyway." He said, "Can I offer you money?" I said, "No, you're going to have to fix something, and I don't know what that is. Take it." And he went and got the thing, and he loaded it up, and he said, "You know what? My 2-year-old son is going to love sitting right here with me and riding around." And his face was just, and before he got on the truck, he fastened it down, and he came back around, and he hugged me. That's one person who did not plan. I said to Elsie, I felt a little guilty. I said, "Elsie, it just happened. I didn't plan it. I just offered him the lawnmower, and he took it." And she said, "I know." That's what being salt and light is about. We already are. All that, whatever makes you tick, is already in you guys. And you don't have to work to be those things. You just have to listen and be open, and when the Spirit kind of does that, you just go ahead and don't worry about it. Now, I'll tell you what, our neighbors across the road, now we are surrounded by Amish except for one family that lives across the road, who are really cool people. But I know that they noticed. Everybody notices when there's a black person up here. Do they not? Do you not? Well, here's two guys, and we're taking a very long time talking and whatever. And I know my neighbors were going, what's going on? You know, whatever. And it's like, I don't care, I'm just being salt and light. I walked in the door, I sat back down, and I went, okay, I was done. But I had God show me what one small, tiny little person, and the world, I believe, is ready for that now. Particularly our country is more ready. This is a seminal time in the American people's history. And what we thought was despair a week ago, if you watch any of the things on the news reports, people are standing together, and the whiteness of us and the blackness of us, we still recognize, but we are trying to be allies to those people of color. I didn't plan on it yesterday afternoon when my lawnmower got delivered, and look at what happened. Just look for the opportunities. And now I'll do the last line. Right now, more than ever, the world needs you. Just be who you are, salt and light. Amen. And now we will receive, we won't, that's my old line, we'll receive our offerings.